All right, so here is the demonstration of how to create swatches based on an outfit or garment that you've created. In this case, we have our 4-tiered skirts. So you definitely want to make sure that each tier is completed with all of your designs and embellishments and patterns and textures first, because all of your swatches will be based on the tier that we're looking at on the fabrics. Okay? The only difference between a swatch and a fabric that's rendered in a garment is that it's just a flat interpretation of it. Just flat. Like you're not going to see rolls of fabric. It's just smooth and flat. There's the difference. Okay, so I'm going to start with tier number 1. So when I kind of analyze this tier, I first want to look like, what is the general color of the skirt here? So if it's really just mostly a solid color fabric, or it's like a gradient, like this looks like it's the green going towards like maybe a yellow, I'm just going to start off by creating a flat gradient of color. So I'm going to go from my green to a little bit of a yellow green to start. And then, just like when I did the skirt, I'm going to layer my pattern right on top of the swatch once it's dry. So I am mixing my color off to the side here. And I'm going to start to add it to my swatch. So that's the main thing. I'm just filling in my color nice and solid. And you want to be careful. Don't go outside the lines. Be neat about it. And then as I work my way towards the right, I'm going to add more of a yellow green. Because that's, I mean, my light source was doing it, but if you're creative, maybe let's just say that the fabric was multi-tonal. So I think it's prettier that way anyway. Okay, so I'm blending. And because it's watercolor, I do want my color to be a bit more saturated. Okay, I'm just adding a little bit more green. There we go. That's a much stronger green. And the key is we want this to look smooth because it is just the background color. Okay, I'll get a little bit of my yellow green mixed in. Once again, I'm definitely much happier with the saturation of the color than when I just started. It's always easier to add than take away, so it's okay to build up to the intensity of the color that you want also. Okay, so that's my solid swatch right there. And it really does, it really has to dry before I start adding my flowers. And especially because what I mentioned before, this is just printer paper. This is why I actually want you guys to trace and use a ruler to remake boxes on the same paper that you created your skirt, because you want it to have the same effect. All right, so the next step is to add my pattern. So you'll notice on my skirt I had this floral pattern. I created these red flowers. So I would very lightly sketch that out first on top, and you can just, it's almost like you're zooming in on a tiny little section. So I'm really just going to focus on this flower, and I'm going to get its general shape here. Here's the petals. Okay, this particular flower also has leaves, these blue leaves that come out of it. So it's like a nice up close view of what that flower looks like. And then the other part of my skirt that's an important detail is this sort of, it almost looks like a pearl necklace, kind of like teardrop situation happening. And I did that with a violet. So I have these dots and then there's little teardrop shapes. So this is my opportunity to do that zoomed in. So I'm going to create my dots and then the tier that goes right along with that, and then continue with the dots. And I'm taking my time. I do want to be neat about it. And that's really all I have to show in my swatch is like the main features, the main details. And the next step, obviously, would be to start replicating that pattern and then that detail. So I'm taking my red watercolor, and I do recommend waiting for this to dry. I said that several times because mine is not totally dry yet, so it's bleeding out a little bit, the color. It's doing it more than I would want it to. And it's not going on quite as thick as I would like because it's still wet. So definitely just wait a little bit until it dries before you do this. Okay, so I'm adding all my petals. Okay, that's all my petals. And then I need to add my blue leaves. So I'm getting my blue paint. Okay, and it's the same thing. So I'm painting my blue leaves. And once again, you want this to be dry. It's not coming out as saturated as I would like because it's not as dry as it needs to be. And finally, a final detail will be those violet dots and the teardrop shape pattern right there. So this is like the up close view of what you would be seeing. It's like zoomed in. I want you to think of it as zooming in. Okay, and that is how you create your swatches.
Is it all due now?
It's due Friday. All right, so you see how the swatches match the tier. Does everyone see that? Okay. All right.